Hello and welcome to this episode of CloudBytes TV, where once again it's about helping you to become the best admin, developer or architect you can be with the Salesforce platform. This is the third video in our Introduction to Apex series, and in this video we're going to talk about using sObjects. So an sObject is a Salesforce object. That is one of the objects that we've defined within our Salesforce environment to work with. It also includes the standard objects as well. So in today's video, we're going to talk about how we can define variables that use the standard Salesforce objects or the custom Salesforce objects that we've defined, and how we can create new instances of them. In order to do that though, we're going to have to take a step back briefly and go and look at how we get the name for them. So in the previous video, if you haven't watched that already, it's really worthwhile you going and looking at that video before you continue on. We discussed typing, and we mentioned that each variable we define has a data type. And we talked about the primitives. We've got string and integer and boolean and date and datetime and so on and so forth. Loads of different types. When we're working with sObjects in memory and we're wanting to either instantiate new sObject instances for us to work with, so creating objects using code, or when we're just retrieving them and wanting to work with them from the database, we need to know what the data type is for our sObject. This is actually the API name. So whenever you define an object in Salesforce, you give it an API name. And on the screen here, you can see that I've got into my object manager, and for the account object at the top here, that's the standard account object that everyone has in every edition of Salesforce. You can see that there is an API name field on the details page, and it is called account. So for the standard account object, the API name is just account, and that is the name of the data type for us to work with. I've also created a custom job object in my environment, and you can see here that it has the API name job_c. And that's the easiest way to tell whether you're ever working with a custom field or a standard field or a custom object and a standard object, is that anything custom, anything that you've created that isn't provided by Salesforce, has $_c at the end of it. So that's a nice, easy way for you to just look at something and understand if it's going to be a custom thing or a standard thing. There's also a couple of other additional extensions you can have. So you can have $_x for external objects, for example, but let's not go too deep into those sorts of things at the moment, and events and big objects and things like that. Let's just talk about custom and standard objects. So custom objects have $_c, standard objects just have the name. So that's our data type. That's really, really important for us to know when we start working with them, and this is why that's so important for when we're defining the object. Let's have a look at how we can define a variable using that data type then. So if we recall, from the previous video, when we're defining a variable, we have to give it a data type. We then give our variable a name, and then we assign it some value. Okay, so our data type here is going to be our object name, so account or job $_c. The variable name is just whatever we want to call the variable. But what about the value? So when we're using sObject types, it's slightly different than working with primitives. Our sObjects, our Salesforce objects, have to be instantiated because an object has fields. Okay. For a primitive data type is actually just a single item. So for example, it is a string or an integer. That's all there is to it. It might inherit from the base object type, and it might actually have some methods and properties on there. For example, a string has a length, but it's actually just itself a single kind of value. For a sObject, or for an sObject that we're working with, such as our account, we have different fields on there. So name, for example. On our job sObject, we've actually defined an additional field called salary, another custom field. And so to work with an sObject, we have to instantiate a new instance of it first, and then we can access the fields on it. So what does that look like? So if we wanted to define a new account variable called ACC or ACK, we would have the data type account here at the top. We would have the variable name ACK, and then we'd say equals, and then new account. Now, the new keyword tells us that we're creating a new instance of an object. Wherever you see that in Apex, it means it's a new instance of an object. Okay? And The next word account is just our data type again, but we're saying that we want to create a new instance of that object, and so we're going to use those parentheses at the end to construct one. Okay, that's what the parentheses at the end mean. That just means create me a new instance of it. So account ac equals new account with those parentheses has created a new instance of an account sObject. The line below then means that we can just do ac.name and then set the name to Acme Corporation. Okay, very, very nice and easy. If we look at our job data type now, we can see that we've got job _c as the data type. We've got job as the name of the variable, and then we're doing the same thing. It's new job _c. So notice that we're always using that API name, account or job _c. And remember that custom objects have _c, as do custom fields, as we'll see in a second. Standard objects and standard fields don't. So that's why it's .name. On our job variable, we can also call variable name dot, and then we add the name field. We go into the name field by .name, and we set the name to be technical architect. And then we're going to use the salary custom field, and that's job.salary _c, and we're going to set that to 50,000. Okay, so really simple and easy for us to work with, and this is one of the most powerful things that Salesforce do for us. Whenever you add a new field or a new object in Salesforce, it automatically goes away and creates this sObject type for us and creates all the fields on there. So if you went into your account object now and added a new field called test _ field, that would then have the name test _ field _c, and it's immediately available to you in your Apex code. This is a huge thing, is a real powerful difference between Salesforce and other languages. When I was working with .NET or Java and working with other databases, you'd have to create your own wrappers for these different things. So you'd have to create what are called domain classes pretty much to allow you to do it. Salesforce just allows you to get away with all of this. It removes all the need for this extra code and provides you an easy way of working with these things in memory. So this is one of my favorite features of Salesforce. Everyone takes it for granted, but it is just really powerful for us. So some important notes then, just as we finish up, is that we can only assign to a name field, so .name, if it's a text type. If it's an auto number, it's going to auto increment, so we can't assign it there. Certain fields are always read-only, so formulas, and then things like last modified date. There are some instances where you can set things like created date when you're using data loading, but just always assume that they're read-only whenever you're working with them in Apex. If you assign a value to a field and then save the record, other processes can still change that. So if you have a workflow rule that's setting the salary field independently, your code can set it and then the workflow can go away and update it. So just be aware of that. So that's the end of this video on working with sObjects in Apex. I hope you found it useful. If you have, please remember to like. If you have any questions, please comment below. And remember to subscribe for the next series of videos in this Introduction to Apex series. Thank you once again for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.